All right, welcome guys. So we're going to do a special recorded video after we had some technical difficulties with our live stream today. We apologize for those who wanted to come on, talk to us, ask questions about certain assets. We'll of course be back at it next week. This was a temporary hiccup because we were working off of our Stream Runners special setup. That's not our typical setup, but regardless, we do want to give a market update today, and we're going to do our best to navigate what's going to be happening for the final 2 weeks of December based on the information we have available to us now. So, right now, we're just looking at the 24-hour social volume and price change percentages to give a glimpse of what's been happening very recently. As many of you who have been following crypto just in the last few days have heard, BONK has been going nuts. It's a Solana based meme coin that, as I believe, it's up to about the 42nd or 43rd market cap rank now. It was somewhere around 68th 24 hours ago and outside the top 100 last week. So that's how much the asset has ascended in market value just in a short period of time here. The other assets worth mentioning would be Aave, which has been going very, very well for those who might have caught our post. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I'm going to be showing all of these slides here, but I put it out a few days ago. On December 12th, we mentioned how there was a big trend of the top 150 largest wallets continuing to accumulate, and they reached their highest point in about 5 months or so. On top of that, and probably more importantly, the RSI fell significantly and went below 40, which we call about the spot where you start to get into an opportunity zone for anything related to the RSI. You'll notice in most cases, Aave tends to bounce around that level. You've seen plenty of examples of that before, and it was no exception now. If we take a live look at that chart that I linked to that tweet, and we go to, we'll say the last 3 months, you'll see what happened. So this was when the post was right here on this red candle, and immediately it ascended. We don't always call the bottoms that precisely, but when we do, of course, you should take note as to which metrics we really isolated to come to that finding, because more and more we're finding out that, metrics like RSI, whale accumulation of some type, especially around the top 150 to 200, these are very good alpha metrics that I've grown to really respect and appreciate. No metric is perfect on their own, but if you see several metrics together that are creating bullish divergences, it can create a pretty good story for an argument to be made that the price is about to see a little uptick, and that's exactly what happened with Aave. Now, going back to our screener here for a moment, a few other ones to mention. Solana up 6.5%. It's probably getting a bit of extra momentum as a result of BONK. You would think that it's the other way around, and meme coins that are associated with, that respective network, like BONK is associated with Solana, they would kind of follow in Solana's footsteps. But right now, I think Solana is actually getting a boost as a result of BONK getting so much attention. Avalanche is up there, plus 5%. Internet computers about plus 10% in the past 24 hours. And I should also mention SATs, which I have yet to really explore. I might do that on a future call, but it's been on a big run over the past week as well. On the social volume end, you'll notice that Bitcoin is starting to get a little bit ignored once again, which is a bit of a concern. We don't want to see the top asset in crypto in terms of market cap getting completely scoffed at the expense of the latest and greatest meme coin or altcoin out there. It means that the crowd is starting to turn more toward speculative assets for their interests instead of the ones that kind of drive markets forward more organically. So Bitcoin, and you can see Ethereum here also down 11% in discussion over the last day. These are a little concerning, in my opinion, and would indicate that we might be close to the top. By the way, you'll notice my bright green mouse cursor. This was a recommendation from a few community members to make my cursor more prominent so you guys can follow along with what I am showing on the screen here. So let me know if you like it in the comments. I'd love to hear your feedback. Now, moving on, let's take a look at some of the on-chain metrics for Bitcoin right now. As we typically do on our This Week in Crypto calls, you'll see that we are getting pretty average transaction volume right now, certainly not slumping in any way, but also not exceeding expectations. So that's about average. And then circulation and address activity. Address activity is a concern for sure. It started to drop off over the last few days. You can see, it went from 1.01 million down to 892K, then yesterday at 699K. So this was actually, believe it or not, the lowest daily active address day we've had in quite some time, going back 6 months or so. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the lowest of the year. I won't find the precise time where it got lower than this, but 762, 762K was a very low day, and then 699 was one of the lowest days we've seen in quite some time. So certainly a bit of a concern that there's so little unique address movement on the Bitcoin network right now in comparison to its normal average. Now, circulation is looking better. We did start to notice the uptick in mid-October, and it really hasn't slowed down. It's staying pretty consistent here, and we can prove that by looking at our NVT model, which is actually showing for the first half of December, we're in our first semi-bullish territory since, I guess, going back to June 2022 when it was bullish, and technically April 2022 is the last time we saw semi-bullish. But for the most part, we were in this long stretch from August 2022 all the way until September 2023, where it was very bearish. And we started to see this turnaround signal. When there's a yellow neutral signal like this, that's a sign that we might be flipping the script a little bit. And according to our circulation versus market cap, which is what the NVT ratio is, we are finally seeing a healthy enough amount of circulation to justify where our market cap is for Bitcoin right now. So that's great to see. Even if daily active addresses is a concern, we can be equally happy about how circulation has been rising. Now, moving on to MVRV, this is basically the average trading returns for any active address that has been moving coins in the last 30 days. They are up an average of 3.2%. And on the 365-day scale, they're up 38.3%. The former isn't too big of a concern. That's about average. MVRVs always fluctuate right around 0%. The higher they go above it, the more of a risk it is to add on to your position or open a new position. So 30-day is fine, but 365-day, yeah, we're still pretty high right now. We've been high ever since December 5th or so when it really surged and Bitcoin got up above 44K. So since December 5th, the past 10 days, we've been in this long-term danger zone. And I would keep that in mind as much as we want to be celebrating right now. Metrics like MVRV are certainly pointing to taking a little bit of a cautious approach right now when it comes to your next moves in crypto for these final 2 weeks of 2023. Zooming in here, let's look at funding rate really quick. It looks like it's pretty normal. Generally, when you see these big high bars, that's the sign of a top. Sometimes it'll just flatten out for a little bit. Other times it's a perfect time to take some profit because prices are about to drop, as we saw when the metric flashed that we were getting a little bit too high in longs versus shorts back on December 9th and 10th. That would have paid dividends if you took profit right here, and then when it got neutral, you could have bought back in at a lower price. You saw kind of a second small wave of that back here on December 13th, where it kind of leveled out and then eventually fell back down. So right now it's back to neutral and can kind of go either way. If we continue following the pattern, that would imply that being back at neutral is a pretty good thing because it bounced the last time we saw a bunch of longs, a price fall, and then it flattens out here. All right, whale transactions, not too exciting right now. It's in kind of a middle range. I don't see any concerns here. It seems like whales are about normally active. I'll come back to the tiers in a moment so we can explore that a little bit and look at the specific wallet sizes that are accumulating or dumping. Mean dollar invested age, I'd also want to take a quick peek at. You can see that this curve here has kind of started to move down a little bit. It's not ready to just drop down, which would be a huge bull market sign, but it's at least flattened out, and you can see just how low the average age of investments have been sitting in average wallets. As long as it's down here, that's still a good sign that we could potentially see Bitcoin and crypto markets continue to grow in market cap these final 2 weeks. That being said, what we'd really like to see is, a straight downturn, like mean dollar invested age going like that. Um, so right now it's at least flattened out over the last 3 or 4 days, which is fine. At least it's not climbing like this, indicating that the network is just getting more and more stagnant without enough dormant movement. But a little bit more would be a really great sign that Bitcoin could push to 50K and beyond. Network realized profit loss, as expected, you saw a ton of profits going on here at the top, and it's kind of neutralized for now. So it's good that we're back in neutral territory. Just watch out for another big, positive spike like this, which is often happening in tandem with a big top. Supply and exchanges, it's also good to see after this big up move here over the past week, it's flattened out in the last 3 days or so. So there's no more, you know, big grouping of coins that are suddenly moving to exchanges and ready to be sold off. That would put Bitcoin's price at risk of seeing another big drop, but at least it's stabilized for now. Social dominance. So this is reflective of what we talked about on the screener. We see that social dominance has taken quite a decline in Bitcoin over the past week or so, and it's actually only being discussed, Bitcoin is at about a 17.7% rate. Generally, anything under 20% means there's some greed going on, and traders are kind of turning elsewhere to more exciting and high leveraged types of opportunities, like BONK, for example, which we'll discuss in a little bit. These other altcoins are essentially taking away the attention from Bitcoin when Bitcoin needs to have a certain amount of attention and trading going on in order to justify market caps continuing to rise and enough, daily active addresses moving around. And as we just saw, daily active addresses have absolutely plummeted the last couple of days for Bitcoin, which I would call a big concern. Weighted sentiment, nothing special here. It's pretty much average. And now let's move on to talking about the whale tiers for Bitcoin, and then we'll look at BONK and a few other specific subjects in crypto that are happening now. So in terms of the whales, and I include sharks in that discussion as well. So this is 10 to 10,000 BTC wallets and the percentage of the supply that they're holding. You can see in bright green, that's the percentage of supply. This very dim green, which is intentional, this is just the overall amount of coins that are being held by those wallets. So 10 to 10,000 BTC wallets, they have declined a bit over the past week. Certainly not a big drop by any means, but you can see that the push up in price was really powered by this accumulation that started just about a month ago, 5 weeks ago, from November 11th all the way up until December 6th. There's this big jump where we saw the supply held go up by 85.5K amongst these collective 10 to 10K BTC wallets. That was also an increase of 0.35% or 0.36% of the entire supply that is available of Bitcoin. So certainly they were doing some accumulating, and now there's just a slight amount of dump, which indicates we might be close to a top. And to add to that theory, we see that USDC has dropped back down after we saw this temporary accumulation on December 11th. Uh, the sharks and whales aren't showing much interest at the moment, and you can see Tether too, going all the way back to September 30th until now. Clearly a big decline in the amount of USDT held by these sharks and whales. And that's, of course, important. These are the top two stablecoins by market cap. And when they're going up, that means there's more buying power for pushing Bitcoin up further. When it's going down, that means there's less buying power, and you need to be a little bit cautious that the key stakeholders are not uh, carrying enough dry powder in order to push up prices at any given moment. We already touched on supply and exchanges for Bitcoin, but take a look at the USDT supply here, which we do see has been moving back to exchanges. So yeah, this may not be coming from the sharks and whales, but we can still be happy with the fact that more Tether over time has moved to exchanges in a pretty big way. We look at 13.6 billion worth of Tether back on September 14th. 3 months later, we're at 15.2 billion. So a pretty big jump. And USDC is looking pretty similar at its lowest on October 14th, about 2 months ago. 1.44 billion of USDC was on exchanges. Now it's up to 1.97 billion. So that is looking better because more stablecoins on exchanges means more dry powder ready to be essentially sold for crypto. That's the theory, at least. And we talked about social dominance and funding rate. Also, take a look at just the total amount of holders for Bitcoin. You can see that it's on a pretty big rise. Initially, you might think this is a good thing, but from what we've gathered through some backtests, it appears as though when there's a lot more tiny micro addresses that are coming onto the network and creating new addresses, that's actually a sign of FOMO. And we see prices tend to go up more when there's a big drop. You can see exactly right here, this was close to the bottom right on September 23rd. I could make the candle a bit more clear and take a look at that. So right when the amount of holders started to decline, so basically the amount of wallets with more than 0 Bitcoin, even if it's 0.0001, that still qualifies. But the amount of those positive number Bitcoin wallets really dropped off a cliff starting on September 23rd. And that was pretty much right around the bottom, if you maybe want to call the next day the bottom. But these are what the opportunities are that you're looking for. And conversely, when you're seeing a lot of increasing wallets that have more than 0 BTC, that's a sign that there's a lot of micro and small fish that are being added to the sea for whales to essentially sell off their wallets, sell off their coins at what they think is a higher value than what Bitcoin should be. And finally, we mentioned this in a recent insight, but total supply and profit is something that I'm looking into a lot more. It was a recently added metric. And let's say we just go back to the last 5 years. I think that this is a good inverse indicator where the lower it is, the more likely we are to see a bounce. Typically, anything over about 80% is a bit of a danger zone. When 80% of the entire supply of Bitcoin is in profit, be a little bit careful because, crypto is a zero-sum game at the end of the day, and you don't want to see too much of the supply profiting at any given time. Otherwise, it implies there's going to be a downfall to eventually push it back down, to the 70 or even 50%-ish range or so. This was the ideal time back here on Black Thursday. You can see the supply and profit was way down at 45%, even going back further to January 2019, way back in the good old days when Bitcoin was at $3,400. The supply and profit was just 41%. So far cry from where we are now, where it's more than double that at 87%, and lots of coins are valued at a higher price than when they first hit the markets, whether they were minted, mined, whatever you call it. There's a very high percentage right now, which is a concern. You can see previously a lot of tops formed when the supply and profit got very high, and we are creeping up to that. So yeah, it's certainly on the Bitcoin end, we're seeing more concerning bearish signals than we are encouraging bullish signals. But certainly this doesn't mean it's the end of the run. It just increases the probability that we're getting close to it. So keep that in mind. It's certainly not an investment advice for you, but I do recommend proceeding with caution, excuse me, in order to ensure you are trading uh, smarter, not harder. All right. On the MVRV side, before we head over to BONK, I do want to point out that altcoins are still showing in the semi overbought to overbought range mostly. And that would be also something to keep in mind if you're an altcoin trader and hopping from asset to asset. There's certainly some concerns here with so many coins being well above an average profit for the average trader right now. That would indicate that there's going to be some event at some point that pushes these prices down or at least flattens them out for a long period of time so that we can get back to neutral like we are for some of these assets, but most of them are certainly semi overbought or overbought. Okay, as promised, let's go over to check out BONK now and see what's going on. So it's not an ERC20 coin. We're going to have limited data on it, I want to warn you, but we can certainly look at just like the last 3 months of metrics like trading volume, and then the social end, which is very important since it's a meme coin. And you can see very clearly trading volume has been through the roof. That's actually a good thing. When you're seeing prices rise, you need to see trading volume going up with it. If you don't, that means there's not enough interest to support the current trend that the price is going on. The same goes for when a price is dropping down and you see trading volume increasing, that means that the likelihood of the price continuing to drop is increasing because of the fact that more volume is pushing the interest toward that trend. So this volume bar is supporting that line, but let's zoom in a little, look at just like an hourly basis instead, when we'll just go the last 5 days or so, that's fine. And yeah, each hour we're still getting more volume, which is a pretty good sign. Maybe the argument could be made that it's starting to taper out here. You can see obviously this was the top here, and it's kind of declined ever so slightly ever since. I would be concerned that trading volume is still going up despite price going down. But let's see how the next 24 hours plays out. I recommend whether you're on a free plan or a pro plan, just watch the volume of BONK very closely, and you'll probably get an idea of how the trader interest trend is moving. All right, social volume and social dominance. Let's go back 1 month. So as you would expect, when prices explode, you're going to see a lot more talk about it. Now, BONK got a massive amount of attention when this ascension happened yesterday. It went up plus 116% at the time that we made a post about it right here. So we said BONK is the subject of discussion at 5.5% of all asset talks. This is by far the highest of all time. And you even see how its price is compared to some comparative market valued meme coins like Shiba, which it passed back on December 7th, and Floki, which, if this trend keeps up, could be passed very soon. The price of BONK surpassed, yeah, as I mentioned, on the 7th, and Floki's upcoming. But yeah, we need to watch the social dominance because it's so high right now on a coin that's pumping. And it was also, I think it still is the number one trending token. Typically, if a token is in the top three for trending, you need to be worried that there's too much FOMO going on. And that's essentially what we were saying in this post. Be cautious of too much crowd FOMO. That's basically, this is a primary top signal, especially for a meme coin where so much of its value is baked into the sentiment rather than the actual objective, on-chain technology of the asset. And, right after that huge social dominance spike, sure enough, the next hour, that's where the top is. And you would have been able to sell and, if you wanted to, rebuy at a lower price. Uh, that's how social dominance works. And really, what we're going to watch now is whether there's a second spike or not. This was the two big hours in which social dominance was through the roof. And now it's calmed down at least a little bit. It's still being talked about a lot higher than its average from way back in early December, or just a few days ago, I should say. But if it has a second run up as prices rise, that would be another signal that a top is forming. If it goes back to being complete non-interest from the crowd, that could actually be a sign that we'll see a bounce because there's um, no more FOMO, and thus prices tend to rebound when it's under the radar once again. And that's pretty much it for BONK. We can just assess as we go, and I think this weekend will be very telling as to whether BONK survives. And remember that we saw a lot more concerning signals for Bitcoin than we did, uh, encouraging ones. So slight bearishness going on in a lot of these metrics right now for the overall markets, because the overall markets are of course tied to Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin starts to collapse, uh, assets like BONK that have been on a huge run up are likely going to get hit the hardest. So it's a pure gamble if you want to bet on the market staying afloat for these final 2 weeks, which the metrics are pointing to being a bit of a shaky bet. You can, and BONK may be one of the better performing assets. But if you are concerned, and whether you've been in BONK or not, um, just try to play it safe if you think that these metrics are going to be indicative of where markets go next. All right, a few other things. I want to look at the social trends really quickly, if I can find it. We'll actually just go back to right here. So we posted this a few days ago about the altcoin season and the hype around it. And you can see quite clearly there was a big spike in altcoin hype back here on December 6th and even December 7th. And you can see these were pretty much right at the top for Bitcoin's price and obviously most of the altcoin markets as well, with BONK and a few others as exceptions. Then we got this second spike here a couple days ago, which is interesting. And yeah, we did go up a little bit further, but this still indicates to me, this social volume spike and this social dominance spike here, that people are a bit too excited about altcoins and the more speculative assets in crypto right now. And my opinion is there's still a bit too much euphoria. We talked about how Bitcoin's overall social dominance is way down compared to altcoin discussions. And if we just put that here in our social context, secondary chart, we can see how they compare to one another. Obviously, it's going to be overwhelming toward Bitcoin as it always is, but you can see the yellow. It's really declined over the last, 10 days in particular, where Bitcoin was being talked about a lot here, and now it's being talked about very little. So that's usually a bit toppish. I'd be a little concerned about that. You can even break it down by certain platforms. You can see Telegram. Bitcoin is in red. That's declined. On Reddit here, Bitcoin is in yellow. That's still staying up okay. Reddit looks a little bit better. And then on Twitter, Bitcoin is in red once again. That's definitely seen a big decline. 4chan, Bitcoin is also in red. Look at the big, it's barely being talked about at all right now. So that's very interesting to me and shows just how much the sentiment has skewed toward speculative altcoin based projects out there. All right, and the final thing is just a quick recap on social trends overall. You can see our AI summary here that shows a new expanded view, which I really like. Our developers just put this out in the last 24 hours. So you can see each asset and what the first 2 to 3 sentences are related to why it's trending. So BONK, we just went over it. It's certainly related to the price. You can see the price trend that really caused BONK to get so much attention. Obviously, Ledger just had a big exploit as well. We talked about that on a video we released yesterday. So make sure to check that out. It was myself and Trevor, also known as Minted Max, talking about that situation. Uh, KAIS or KAIS is trending because of its association with Bill Pulte and discussions about PHM. And then we have PHM right below it. SafeMoon is back in the top 10 again. Apes. And then we have some talks about lawyers and bankruptcy. Oh, I see. So this is actually related to SafeMoon filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and that's why it's trending. And then Aave, coincidentally, which is obviously an asset we called about 3 or 4 days ago. So congratulations if you decided to pay attention to that project after we talked about it or for whatever other reason. Just remember that when we do post about any asset and the bullish divergences that are forming, it isn't our suggestion to buy, but it's our example that we're using of what a historical bullish divergence looks like. And then you can basically do what you'd like with that information. And I even had a few community members say that they caught wind of Aave after we pointed it out on Twitter, and they researched a few other things about it, decided to invest, and it's worked out well for them. So just remember, we're not here to just make calls for you to modify your portfolio accordingly. We're trying to give examples of assets that are looking good or bad at any time based on historical evidence using sentiment metrics. So all of that said, going into this weekend, I think it's going to be choppier than usual. We had obviously a final FOMC decision to hold rates steady and potentially even begin to look into cutting them at the beginning of 2024. So stocks and crypto have both done pretty well since that announcement. But I would imagine, especially at the end of the year, considering there's some correlation between crypto and stocks, you want to be a little careful knowing that stocks do tend to decline a little more toward the end of the year for tax purposes, and crypto could have a bit of an impact as well, especially because it's been such a positive year and a lot of taxes are, I guess I should say, profits are very positive for many people in the year 2023, whether it's stocks or crypto. So sometimes you'll see a downswing at the very end as people cash out for tax purposes. Not a guarantee though. Every year is different, and crypto's only been around 15 years or so, meaning it's a relatively small sample size to make those kinds of declarations about what normally happens at any time of year. All right, with that said, we'll be back live with a stream where we can talk in real time about questions you have. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great weekend, and we will see you for the next video in a few days or next week or so. Take care.